Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Ultra in Conversation. And today I am conversing with the feisty green fingered Fiona of Avid Gardener. Hello, Fiona, and a warm welcome to you.
Hello, HG Tudor. This is awesome. Thank you very much for inviting me to do this.
It is my pleasure. Thank you for agreeing to do it. Now, first of all, you have to tell me about the name Avid Gardener. Is this based on being a devotee of the herbaceous border, or that you enjoy strolling across pristine, verdant lawns? Why this name?
I don't know. I suppose I chose it because I thought it was the most inoffensive thing I could think of.
Ah,
Um, I'm not really very good at gardening. I'm getting better. I'm not killing quite as many plants. It's quite difficult down here because it's really arid. So
yes.
watering is really important. But no, I'd seen a lot of the sugars comments before I even thought of dipping my toe in the water, and they're so vicious. They certainly were back then. I was
Yes.
thinking, what can I choose? But some of them called me acid gardener or rancid gardener. I mean, they'll always find a way. So
Yes, there was one that called me HG Tudor, which like hugely imaginative. Well done. Would you like a chufty badge? Your mother must be so proud of you. So they are pathetic. Well, we'll be talking about those venomous individuals in due course. But before we get to them, we need to meander through the connection that links the likes of you and I and them, and that, of course, is Harry and this one's wife. Now, you do quite a number of videos about them. It dominates on your channel. So, what prompted you, Fiona, to cover them to the extent that you have?
we have had our own two. I'm convinced they're not only narcissists, they're psychotic psychopaths in our
Okay.
lives. We encountered them through work issues, let's put it that way. And we had been warned before we even got our jobs, these people will destroy your life. People have been arrested, people have been charged, some have gone to prison, some have left Gibraltar because of them. They will find out if you're religious, which church you go to, so they can spread poison, or which pub. They get people barred. We thought they were exaggerating. We thought we'd seen it all because
Mm,
we've lived colourful lives.
yeah.
And I had never seen anything like this. And thank God I haven't seen anything since in our own personal lives. So I was determined for about 8 years to find out what was wrong with them, because I was convinced there was something, there was a reason. And I discovered Dr. Ramani first on YouTube, and then your good self.
Yes.
And I found your videos enormously comforting. Um, I would sort of just curl up on the sofa and listen intently to the way you broke it all down.
Hmm.
And your channel is really a public service. I can't emphasize that enough, as well as Dr. Ramani. But she has a lot of visual because she's her hands moving, whereas with you, it's very much like listening to the radio and
Yeah.
listening to a very reassuring voice explain in graphic detail what the problem is.
Hmm. Thank you. Well, I'm pleased that my channel has helped you so much. As you know, I don't appear because I have to protect my identity, but also part of it is that I don't want people distracted by what's necessarily going on the screen. I want them to listen to what I'm saying. It also helps people, for instance, they can listen to me when they're driving or when they're on the treadmill, or perhaps if they were engaging in some avid gardening, that they'd be able to listen to what I had to say. So thank you for those compliments. I appreciate that. Now, with this one's wife, as you know, she's a narcissist. I've analyzed her in huge detail and was the first person to point out that's what she was and the reasons why. But when did you think that there was something off about her?
From the engagement interview.
Yeah. And can you expand on that? What was it you were seeing that made you think, hmm,
A lot of it at the time, I didn't really know why. It was just tripping alarm bells off. Um, I wasn't comfortable with her saying she'd never heard of Prince Harry before. She'd
yeah,
never Googled him. But then I thought, well, I'll cut her some slack. You know, what are these girls supposed to say who marry into the royal family without sounding disingenuous? But then as the interview went on, it I could see she felt she was way more important than him.
Yeah. Now that's interesting there that you talk about, oh, I'll give her a little bit of slack, I'll give her the benefit of the doubt. And as you've come to learn, that's how my kind inveigle our way in, because you invariably don't immediately think, oh, hang on a second, this person's a narcissist, or even think to yourself, hang on a second, this person's a wrong 'un, I better stay away from them. It is a natural response of most individuals to give a person the benefit of the doubt, so that they think to themselves, well, they might have done this, but there could be a valid reason for it. And there's a lot propagated, of course, by well-intentioned people who will say, well, you never truly know what's going on in somebody's life. So that behavior could be because they've got problems at home, they've got stresses at work, etc. And that may well be correct. But it also enables us to get that pass, because when you do notice something unusual about our behavior, you don't necessarily take true notice of the red flag that's flying. A number of people have talked about the engagement interview, Fiona, whereby that was probably the first occasion where they saw her and the way that she was behaving. And as you know, I've analysed that interaction between the two of them and picked up all of the indicators of her narcissism. Now, having spoken about the pair of them extensively, to your mind, what particular aspect of Harry and this one's wife's lives do you think gets the most views? What is it that tickles people's fancy when it comes to them?
Oh, their downfall.
Yeah. I've certainly
sorry.
Yeah, I've certainly noticed that any topic that relates to something going wrong for them, or there being some kind of outrageous behavior, or, as you point out, their downfall, it certainly draws people. Why do you think that is? Why do you think people are so invested in their downfall?
Because she got everything her own way, and so did Harry, for so long, for years. And their real downfall has only sort of come since South Park, and it's been a slow burn.
Yeah.
And you actually did a series of videos where you said Meghan Markle's top 10 worst enemies, and you did a different video for each number.
Yeah.
And you said you'll all be surprised at who number 1 is. And I didn't actually guess it until you released the video, that really she is her own worst enemy.
Correct. That's right. And I regularly explain this to people, Fiona, that there are those narcissists such as myself that are self-aware, that plan, that have access to resource and have extensive reach. Those type of narcissists, although they are problematic for people one-on-one, they tend to operate almost in this rarefied atmosphere where it, like the whole world is a game to them. The majority of narcissists, as per my categorization being lesser and mid-range, they haven't got the ability to sort of puppeteer the world. And you give them enough rope, they will, to use the technical term, fuck up, because their narcissism is so focused on the now, it always creates those collateral consequences. And the problem is, people, because they don't understand what they're dealing with, they feel overwhelmed by what they're up against. They're often worn down themselves. They might have children they're trying to protect. They feel like they're fighting a war on all fronts. It often feels like the narcissist is winning. But actually, you give it some time and you'll see the narcissist invariably shoots themselves in the foot when they're lesser or mid-range. And as I've pointed out repeatedly with this one's wife, she's done so time and time again. Those that say that she's this strategist and this calculated individual, she's not. She's a nasty piece of work. She has overarching aims such as, I want to be famous, I want to be rich. But she hasn't got the intelligence nor the narc craft, if I can describe it as such, to engage in something. That's why she makes so many mistakes. That's why, take for example, Barack Obama. He's one of our kind. He's slick, he's charismatic, he's remained at the top of his game. Has he made major... yes, there are people who don't like him because of his politics, but then there's still a lot of people that really do. But you also, you don't get him wearing something inappropriate. You don't get him leaving an event partway through so people criticize him. You don't get situations where he orchestrates a near catastrophic car chase.
Mm.
So he's much more evolved in his behaviors, whereas with her, it's schoolgirl errors, and she is her own worst enemy, and she'll bring about her own downfall, and that's what will happen. So it is naturally the case that many people are invested in seeing that happen. Do you think they want to see that happen because they simply don't like her and they think she deserves it, or do they think, perhaps akin to what you were suggesting, she had the world at her feet and she's messed it up, and there's a degree of, well, it's justice that this occurs?
I think that's the operative word. I think most people want to see justice. Most people who watch this subject have had their own problems and have suffered. And she's become the patron saint of narcissism, really. And well, for me, to see her downfall, one day I hope to be able to say to at least one of our psychopaths, this is going to happen to you. I mean, they're not terribly successful people.
Right.
They don't even fake it like Meghan Markle. They struggle to crack a smile.
Yeah.
So I would suggest they're not as good at it as her. And as you say, she's nowhere near as charming or endearing as your good self, or as you've given of Barack Obama. I never really thought about him as a narcissist, or anyone else. Some of them are really hammy and really obvious.
That's right.
Yeah, I think it's justice. People just want to see some justice. There are a lot of people who lie, big lies. They pretend that they've got massive military careers. They pretend all sorts of things. They have qualifications they don't have. And I think that's been going on a long time, and no one's ever sort of exposed it or challenged it. And along comes Meghan Markle.
Yeah, absolutely. Given that there are lots of there are numerous rumors about her, of what she's done in the past, the yacht girl stuff, the hazing incident, etc. We have the whole thing around the pregnancy and the moon bumps. But there's generally been a reluctance from the mainstream media to really sort of get their teeth into all of that. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I mean, they just don't seem to be with it. I don't know if they're run by dinosaurs. They don't seem to understand the internet, even now. They don't seem to understand what goes viral, what makes people click, what makes people interested. They just keep doing the same boring old stuff, and they wonder why their figures are dwindling. But yeah, it would be good to see them, or maybe they're just dragging it out.
I think it's interesting because you make a valid point about them understanding the internet, because these days a lot of what is meant to be reportage is really just repeatage, where they repeat what they found on the internet. Somebody scours Reddit and the likes of the Daily Star and so forth, and the Mirror, not exactly reputable newspapers, they're more rags, but they'll say, woman outraged has thrown off Ryanair flight, and then you get they've just lifted it off social media, and then people react to it once again. So it's not really proper journalism, it's rather lazy. So you would think that given there's such a reliance on that they would get hold of the essence of what truly matters to people on the internet and think there's something here, that we could really, a decent investigative journalist would start going around and asking some questions. And I think that the reason they haven't done it, obviously there's been speculation about the presence of a super injunction and so forth, but I think the main reason they do it, and you've touched on it, is this: it's the golden goose for them. If you slay this one's wife by uncovering all of these things about her, so that she basically retreats from public view and goes into hiding as the only way to deal with the exposure that she's experienced, that in effect she brought to ruin, because nobody will touch her as in an organization or a company, because they'll go, oh my goodness, this is what she's done. She actually, that's her past, and she behaved like that, and actually we have found out that the pregnancies weren't genuine, etc., that they wouldn't touch her. It would then mean that a particular cash cow for them has disappeared, because at the moment they know that they still get lots of clicks that sells advertising revenue. So it makes sense to make it almost like a death by 1,000 cuts, to every so once in a while talk about what she's doing, prod her. And in some instances, you'll notice the Daily Mail is often against her, but occasionally they will run articles which talk about how sensational she looked, how stylish she looked. And I think they do that purposefully, because they know that it will get to people, and the comment section will blow up with them criticizing her. So
yes, it could be. It could be. I mean, I don't understand it because there's so much material there with her.
Yeah,
It could run for years.
yeah. But you would think, while some of the big boys might well look at it and think, yeah, none of us are going to do that because we're all dining at the table and there's enough to go around.
Mm.
You would think that somebody who wasn't that bothered, perhaps a more quality investigative journalist would say, I want to be the one that exposes what's really gone on. I'm not bothered about slaying the golden goose, slaughtering the cash cow, etc. But so far it hasn't happened. So is that because they just don't want to touch her? Is it because these rumours aren't actually true?
Well, Valentine Lowe, of course,
Yes.
broke the story of the bullying in the palace. Now, there may be an element of fear because the letter to her father and all of that court case, I'm not a fan of the Daily Mail, but you could have knocked me down with a feather that firstly they lost the case, and then in the Court of Appeal, it was clear to me, in my definition of perjury is you lie under oath or you lie on an affidavit, and then it's proved beyond reasonable doubt that you did that. Well, as far as I can see, the Daily Mail lawyers did prove that with the Jason North emails. But apparently those standards of criminal behaviour don't apply to Meghan and Harry. So put yourself in the shoes of an editor. What the hell just happened here?
Yeah, I think the judge's first instance decision in that letter case was clearly an example of someone who was looking to protect the monarchy because they were still viewed as part of it at that juncture. And you basically had a royalist judge who was going to find his way to ensure that the Mail lost. And then thereafter, you talk about the fact, of course, that she produced these sudden emails going, basically, I forgot about them. And unfortunately, with some judges, they are somewhat hesitant to find that somebody has lied. And they basically go, well, it is understandable that this person happened to forget them. So they let them off when it's evident to everybody else that you've told a porky pie there. Certain judges just don't like doing it. And again, if they think, well, they're still part of the royal family, we don't want to be seen to be attacking the royal family, maybe that's why nothing more happened with it, which, of course, isn't appropriate application of justice if you're making a distinction there. But let's not be naive. When has justice ever been applied equally? We all know that that's not the case. Now, talking about, I'm aware that you had some issues that you've spoken about in relation to being stalked and people issuing threats against you, and Graham also. I know that you've previously referenced that you saw this one's wife as the person inciting such hatred. Can you expand on all of that for me? I appreciate it's an expansive topic and there's probably a lot to cover, but if you can sort of give me a synopsis of it as best you can.
Well, she sets an example and she never criticises her supposed fans. And I mean, I don't see anything wrong with her if she was innocent, completely innocent, and didn't like it, saying, please don't do this. This is really awful. I mean, for example, all the stuff about Princess of Wales, oh, she's dead, or she's been beaten up. Meghan could easily have stepped forward and said, please stop this. This is a human being you're talking about, but she wouldn't do it. That speaks volumes. So, and she meets some of these people at their weird events. You know, they go to a Beyonce concert or a football match or something like that. And then there are these people who have been behaving extremely badly online. And there she is, she and Harry. Sorry, that's my ice machine, by the way. I can turn it off if it's annoying you. And yes, it sets a very, very bad example, as we've just seen with Donald Trump being shot at. And lots of world leaders have had to come out and say, this is not acceptable. Isn't it outrageous that they have to say, this is not acceptable? It's like there are citizens among us who think it's acceptable, which it isn't.
Yeah.
And Meghan is the same. And yeah, I mean, the threats and the stalking and stuff like that. I knew that would happen because there were YouTubers before that it happened to. It's bizarre. Have you ever had that?
I haven't had anybody stalking me because
They don't know who you
They
are.
don't know who I am, and finding me would be extremely difficult for them and wouldn't be a very sensible thing to do either. And the fact is, as I often say, I use words that have many syllables, so I often don't think they really understand what I'm saying. So I confuse them so that their hive brain cell goes into meltdown around me. One of the advantages, of course, I also have in relation to my channel, and I do not doubt that it's been reported repeatedly by these individuals. But one of the advantages I have, of course, is that it's a channel about narcissism and psychopathy. So I tell you all about those various things, how I see the world, how my kind see the world, how we manipulate. I analyze other famous and infamous individuals. It's not all about this one's wife. A substantial proportion of it is because so many people are interested in her, and it would be remiss of me not to use such a fantastic example to teach about narcissism. And also, I periodically take the piss out of her because it alleviates the boredom of talking about such a beige individual. But the fact that I have a multiplicity of strands to my work of this channel does help me, because other people have fallen foul because they just basically seem like a gossip channel, and it's easy then to suggest it's just a hate channel, that there's this relentless criticism, and it's not seen as any sort of critical analysis of her behavior. But you've got to bear in mind, people are allowed to express a view. So if you don't like a person, you don't like what they're doing, you are allowed to speak about it. But they deem that you're not allowed to do that because, as you know, because she's a narcissist, criticism of her threatens her need for control, and so she has to try and shut that down. So I get the odd sugar that comes wandering in, almost as if they've got lost in a department store and have gone into the wrong department, and they'll invariably accuse me of being a racist, and they'll accuse me of being, jealous, even though they mean envious, and it's the standard phrases that we all know so well. But I don't get too many. And I'm not that prevalent on X either, which I think a lot of the vitriol takes place on there. I think that's a real battleground. What have you experienced in relation to the sugars? What's happened with you?
Well, quite a lot in our private lives that I can't talk about online, because there's been actual stuff that's happened in real life. I mean, if it's online, I don't care. Really, I don't care. There's one particular stalker, and I'm certain there's money, there's payment behind it. So we're all waiting and hoping something comes out of that. Can you imagine the headlines if it was traced back?
So I appreciate you may not be able to say too much about it, but just so I understand correctly, there is an individual that has been stalking you in real life. It's not cyber stalking, it's physical stalking. Okay. And you understand that that person has been put up to it by payment?
I deeply suspect, yeah.
Right, okay. And evidently the inference from what you're saying is that there's an ongoing and live investigation into all of that. Right, well, it'd be interesting to see what comes out of that. I'm sure that at some point you'll talk more about that when you're not at risk of prejudicing it. So,
well, yeah, I mean, as soon as we can, we're going to have a field day. All of us, YouTubers, yourself included, all of us will have a field day. So will the press, if I'm right. Because all the pontificating they've done about kindfulness and mindfulness and compassionateness and all these other bollocks words she comes out with, they want everyone to hug each other online. Can you imagine the headlines? I mean, for example, Harry the Troll. Bullying allegations at the palace are going to surface again strongly under headlines like that. It's worse than any kind of surrogacy story. Way worse.
Yes. Well, we will wait to see what comes out of that. You've referenced previously, Fiona, about YouTube restricting your videos on repeated occasions. Can you talk about what those actual restrictions are and why you think you're being restricted?
Yes. A video that I think my latest video, people's comments were actually disappearing as I was going to reply to them. And I'm like, what the hell? And people have complained about this a lot. I'm a monetized channel, and as you know yourself, when it's fully no restriction, you get a green dollar. When you get a yellow dollar, it means it might be adult content or not suitable for all advertisers. But those particular videos, they tend to delete the comments like crazy. And the comments are the part that I really enjoy about being a YouTuber. So yeah, but I did think I've got a YouTube manager. I don't know, because over time I've had less generic emails from YouTube. It's more personalized.
Mm-hmm.
And they seem to have lifted this. I haven't had any restricted videos. It was like someone was taking it off on a Monday morning. Everything would be fine through until Saturday. Then it started again over the weekend. Like someone else has taken over, someone who sympathizes deeply, perhaps with Meghan and Harry. And then the other person would come in on the Monday and everything was lifted and it was back to normal. But I haven't had any restricted for quite a few weeks now. So
Interesting. I have mentioned previously when I was talking about Amber Heard, every single video that went up that mentioned Amber Heard was automatically restricted, which was clearly the case that the algorithm had been set so that the words Amber Heard or Johnny Depp or whatever have been mentioned, you get restricted. Similarly, I know with some videos, I have one which is how does the narcissist react when you tell them that they are an abuser? That gets restricted because it's got abuser in the title,
yeah.
even though the content of it isn't particularly problematic. It's not, it wouldn't trigger anybody. It's not offensive. It's fairly, it's pretty innocuous, really, the content. It's just explaining how somebody would react. So they've evidently got those robotic triggers, I think, that are imposed. I do gain the impression that they look to almost, I know I've spoken to other YouTubers who talk about, videos being choked in a way, so they're not getting as much prominence. And I was explaining to somebody else that I have a sort of manager that I have spoken to on a couple of occasions in conference calls at YouTube, and have been pretty responsive, in fairness. And I put out a video last September. It was a short, and it was just basically along the lines of, here's a narcissist in action. And it was this one's wife with Harry, where Harry was talking to someone else, and immediately you got the sort of death stare, the mask falls away. And it raced ahead in views, and it's currently got about 750,000. And at the time, it was racking up huge daily views, several thousand every single day. And this was going on day after day after day after day. And then all of a sudden, it dropped off a cliff. And I thought to myself, why would that video suddenly not be popular? It might plateau and then it might have a gradual decrease, but why would it drop off a cliff? So I asked them about it, and she said, oh, after 28 days, the algorithm lessens its availability. They automatically do that. Now, why would you not allow a video to stay popular?
Yeah.
And what you've also got to keep in mind is that they have that power that with certain subjects, they will downplay them. And I think that controversial topics, and if she's got some sympathizers as well, whilst they're not necessarily striking down the channels of everybody that talks about her, you do think that they might be doing something just to sort of, dial it down from 10 down to number 6. So there isn't the same level of exposure. But it's such a task for them because it's like whack-a-mole. You shut one down and somebody else will pop up. You're never going to silence everybody. And I think to an extent they're mindful of that if they were to do so, that they would face so much criticism that it would backfire. So I think the policy more is to go after people for breaches of the community guidelines, etc. So if somebody sticks their head above the parapet in that respect, that would occur. Now, would you describe yourself as a royalist?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So who's your favourite member of the royal family?
Oh, that's a hard one to choose because I like them all for different reasons. All of the Wales family, of course, but I admire them all for different reasons. I mean, Charles and Camilla have lived through a lot of criticism, and they're still together. Princess Anne, her resilience. It's impossible to choose. I can tell you who my least favourites are. That's a lot easier.
But that is a lot easier. Yeah, many people always go for Catherine when I ask them about that, but you go for the Wales family, I suppose, if you were to pick any. What annoys you the most about this one's wife?
Oh boy. I don't know. The fact that she did, it just seems apparent she's not taken down, that there are still people who believe that that she's representing in somehow all good things, you know, and held up, and people feel like they're protecting her from being bullied. They just can't see it. Yeah, that irritates the hell out of me. People who can't see it.
Yes, when you come across that, Fiona, are you minded to want to try and set these people straight, or have you just thought it's pointless?
Pointless.
Yeah.
Pointless.
Waste of breath.
Yeah.
Why do you think that those individuals are so impervious to seeing it?
Well, let's take Denise Walsh, for example. Is it Denise Welsh? She's a short blonde hair on Loose Women. She's made it clear that she doesn't like the royal family because of Princess Diana, or any perceived slights she's got in mind there, that Prince Andrew spoke badly of Princess Diana after her death. And that's her reason. Well, I'm just going to stick up for Meghan and Harry and be like that because of that. And I think, well, Denise, that's not exactly critical thinking, is it?
It certainly
Dr.
isn't.
Scholar, I think anything that's going to make her shout and scream her head off about racism, that's her reasoning. I haven't seen Oprah Winfrey say much lately.
No. Do you think it's as a consequence of they are just incapable of seeing it? Or is it perhaps the example you've referenced with Denise Welch? Well, I know that she's difficult to defend, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway.
I think they're just so blinded by their own issues. They can't see. They just can't see it. They're not even looking.
So you think that they themselves are, they have an issue where they're just not able to. They're just not able to pick up on it. They can't. What I've noticed is, and again, it goes back to something that I've spoken about repeatedly, that over time, the narcissist basically racks up the evidence against themselves. And so you'll see some people who at first would have thought, going back to the point we made earlier on, well, you know, there's a couple of things there, but let's give her the benefit of the doubt. And then 2, 3, 4 years go by, and it's like, it keeps happening, doesn't it? The stupid lies, the revisions of history, the elbowing people out of the way, the staring down the camera lens, the telling the untruths, the always having to be the center of things. Yeah, I can see it now. And so there are some people that have changed their mind, but she is a very divisive individual in that there are still lots of people who basically don't give a rat's ass about her. They've got other things to care about. But those that are interested in the topic, it's very divisive in the drawing of the battle lines when you have her supporters, because occasionally I will venture into areas which are pro-Sussex, and I like you, I'm not going to waste my time attempting to try and persuade these individuals of the efficacy of the evidence, but the level of delusion that's exhibited is quite remarkable, and the interpretation of the evidence is such that it's a lot of it, I think, is to suit their own personal prejudices.
Yes, I mean, there are other things like they all seem to have in common that they pretty much loathe Piers Morgan, who's a divisive character in himself. Yeah. And when he walked out of Good Morning Britain, I think a lot of them are loathed to say, you know what, he was right, she was lying. Yeah. He had every right to say she was a liar, and they just can't bring themselves to do that because they would align with Piers.
Yeah.
They'd rather die. Trisha Goddard is another one. Although she's a woman of colour, I don't think it's ever been about racism with her. She referred to, she doesn't like misogyny and pussy whipped and terms like that. So for Trisha, it's that type of thing. And as these things become exposed by Meghan, they will fall away bit by bit. I could see.
I mean, it's interesting.
Sorry.
Yeah, it is interesting you mentioned Piers Morgan, as I've explained before. He's a narcissist, but the narcissist can use the truth as well. So he used the truth of her behavior, again, for his own purposes, but he was speaking the truth about what she was doing. And that's where there are occasions in the way that I do it, also, that it's advantageous having the involvement of the narcissist, because the narcissist will be forthright. And with Piers, this is how it is. I'm telling you all. I'm forthright in my observations about it. And he was pretty much at mainstream news level a sole voice in the wilderness, calling her out. You know, the way that ridiculous weather individual went on with him on Good Morning Britain, it was pathetic, wasn't it? And he was absolutely right in what he was saying. And of course, he walked out as a means of nullifying the threat to control by withdrawing. But he was correct in what was said. Of course, what you've got to understand as well with Piers is that hitherto, of course, he was kissing her backside. And then when she ghosted him, which threatened his need for control, she became painted black. And thereafter, he's been gunning for her. So it's not out of any moral crusade on his part. It's quite simply self-serving. But where he has that platform, it's advantageous to have somebody like that calling out her behaviours, because everybody else who can see it can almost sort of group behind what he has to say, because he has that prominent position. Let's turn to Harry. What annoys you most about Harry?
Oh, he's arrogant. He thinks he's cleverer than he is, which was pretty obvious. He's not clever at all.
Yeah. Whereas clearly the case. He's not bright. How much of his behaviour do you think is him falling for the poison that she's dripped in his ear, and how much of it's down to he's not bright, he's arrogant, he's resentful?
I think he's had life handed to him on a plate all the time. He's a prince, about as princely as you can get when it comes to being spoiled.
Yeah.
And it's probably come as a shock to him that basically everyone, his family, his school friends, his mates, his buddies, all said, don't do it. You know, oh, she's awful.
Yeah.
And when they left, he did that speech, didn't he, where he said, she's still the woman I married. Now that we've only been married to her for a very short time, who's been saying she's not the woman you married?
Yeah, good point.
What prompted you to say that, Dumbo?
Yeah, good point. Evidently, all those around him have been pointing out to him. And again, that's entirely typical of that primary victim of a narcissist, that other people are saying, you know, she's a problem. This is going too fast. She's said this, she's done that. You need to get out of there. And they never ever listen, because they're not only are they caught up in the manipulations whereby they think this person is the best thing since sliced bread because of the way they're being treated. Their own emotional thinking affects that. And with someone like Harry, who has strong narcissistic traits in the sense of he is defiant, he's argumentative, he's resentful, the fact that if you try and tell him he's wrong, he just shuts it down. Yeah. Even though what you're telling him is absolutely nailed on, and he will ultimately come to realize it. Even someone as dumb as him will realize they were right. I should have listened. But it'll be some time before he has that moment of wakening up. Have you always appreciated, Fiona, that it's narcissism that's driven this one's wife's behavior, or did you think it was down to something else?
No, I mean, I wasn't that familiar with narcissism. I'd heard of narcissism, obviously based on Narcissus. I think it's overused now. I suspect you think that as well. You know, everybody's like, you're a narcissist, he's a narcissist. And it's not really like that.
True.
Everyone has narcissism to a degree. No, I really genuinely didn't know what the hell it was.
Okay.
That's how I found your channel.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you did. It's certainly the case that many people bandy the term around to describe somebody doing something that they don't like. So that if basically someone's ended the relationship or not gone along with what you want, oh, they're a narcissist. And of course, it's much more detailed than that. So it does there's a greater degree of awareness about it compared to even 5 years ago, certainly 10, 15 years ago. But it is still bandied around by individuals as a buzzword for certain behavior, and it's not used correctly in that respect, which of course diminishes the impact of when you are dealing with a full-blown narcissist, as I'm sure you can attest to.
Yeah, until you have actually had a real one come into your life, you haven't got a clue. As I say, I didn't think I'd led a sheltered life before we came across R2, and my goodness, I couldn't believe it.
How long's that been going on for, or had been going on for?
Well, I think we put up with a good solid 12 years of it. The first 8 years were intense. I mean, they were all over us, particularly our family, because they'd worn our bosses down. They were actually closing the business when we got jobs there. I didn't realise that until we were both working for the same company, and they said, if you can't fix this in the next 8 weeks, you're out of a job. We're closing down. We've had enough. So we did everything we could, not just in the first 8 weeks, but I mean, for months after, pictures of the dolphins in the window to show we can find dolphins. We're changing the paint on the boat so they couldn't say it's a smelly old fishing boat. I mean, everything. And they wanted us out. We became instant targets. They wanted us out, out, out. And our bosses sort of got a new lease of life, and the business grew again. And that was not what they wanted. That was not what they wanted at all. I mean, all sorts of terrible things happened.
Just to help me, these individuals that you identified as narcissists, what was their relationship to you?
Nothing. Just a couple of people in the area who didn't like the people we worked for. That was it.
I see. And because you were working for them, you then became part of the problem as well, and you were targeted.
Yes,
I understand.
very much so. And Graham's a photographer, and he was taking lots of photographs of the dolphins, and we were blogging every day on Facebook. Look how many dolphins we found, and they didn't like any of that. They wanted that to stop. It had to stop. And in order to make it stop, well, of course, we have children, we had pets, we have a boat. A lot happened. A lot happened, and I'd never, ever, ever seen that level of evil in my life.
What were they doing?
A lot. I have done videos on it before. I mean, in recent years, because we're not so much around there, they're not so much of a problem. And one of them got very, very ill, and a lot of it calmed down then because they had other things to worry about.
Yes, I understand.
I mean, we lost pets, let's put it that way.
Okay.
Not by their hand. It's more malicious gossip in the community to rev other people up to do the dirty work, a lot like Meghan, how I see Meghan and Harry. And then going, oh, that was nothing to do with me, little old me. So
I understand. So they were basically utilising lieutenants to do their dirty work on their behalf.
Yeah, very much. So, yeah.
Sounds like that's an entire conversation in itself, actually. It sounds pretty wide-ranging. We might have to address that.
Well, one day when they're dead or in prison, and I'm sure one of the other will happen sooner rather than later. Because, as you say, they're not particularly intelligent, and they have been the authors of their own downfall in a lot of ways. As I say, one of them has been very, very ill.
Yeah.
And I'm convinced they wouldn't have been that ill had they not led such a negative life.
Mm-hmm. I can understand why you think that. Yeah. Now, with Harry, do you have a favoured nickname for him?
No, I just generally call him Windsor because I bet he hates that.
And what about this one's wife? What a nickname for her?
Just Meghan, really.
Okay, you keep it simple. You don't engage in the multiplicity of nicknames that I use for them. Fair enough.
Probably more colourful names off camera.
Yes, I'm sure that's probably the case. I want you to put your imagination hat on, and it's the end of another day over there in California. The temperature's just starting to go down, and the crickets are making a noise outside of the window. And it's bedtime for Harry and this one's wife. What do you think their bedtime is like, Fiona? If you can stomach describing it.
I don't think they live together.
Okay.
And I don't think they have for ages. I think that's quite common in Hollywood. There was Will Smith and Jada, whatever her name was.
Jada Pinkett Smith. Yeah,
they separated 6 years ago. I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah. Yeah. So you don't think that they live together?
No, I don't. I think they appear at things together. There's nothing natural about it. They're never having like a giggle between each other. If you see couples, quite often there'll be something, maybe not all the time, they'll have a giggle. It's so the rictus grin, and he sits there like a victim. I mean, he must be damaged by this, because out of his own obstinate behaviour, He just wouldn't take advice. He wants to prove how clever he is, how right he was about her. So it's going to be a big climb down for him to say, do you know what, guys, you were right. I was wrong.
Do you think he will get to that point?
I think he's just arrived at it. I think he's just realised.
Do you think there's something specific that's caused that realization, or is it just an accumulation of everything that's gone on?
Probably an accumulation, but I mean, he's just losing stuff left, right and centre. I doubt they're getting A-listers returning calls. The EPSI Awards, I think that hit him really hard, like the booing at St Paul's Cathedral.
Yeah, it certainly, when I saw him walk up to receive the award, it looked like he was going to blow chunks. He looked like he was shitting himself. And that we know that he kept the other three people on stage as like a human shield. And that, you know, he really anticipated that he was going to get a chorus of boos. And whilst there was some dissension there, you could hear some booing when they were mentioned earlier on by Serena Williams. He clearly recognizes that people don't like them. Do you think he understands why it is, or do you think he's still defiant about that this is just as a consequence of agitators?
I think he's worked out that it's his wife. She won't know. She will see it as this is all his fault. She now needs to distance herself from him. She was a success before she met him. You know, that's how I see it.
That's right. That's the way the narcissist mind will work. It's either my PR person's fault, or it's Harry's fault, or it's the British press's fault, or it's the people in the UK's fault, or it's the water sprinkler's fault because it wasn't set to the right setting. It'd be any of those things. It would never, ever be her fault because she is pathologically incapable of accepting responsibility. Indeed. What do you think this one's wife's last words will be? She's there. She's there lying on that deathbed. She might have got another couple of decades under her belt. Who knows? She may well have had her 57th piece of cosmetic surgery, but she's on her way out. She's shuffling off this mortal coil. Death is there with his adamantine scythe, ready to sever the connection between this plane. And her final words are going to come from that mouth. Assuming the veneers aren't too big and she's able to speak, what might she say?
Well, firstly, I'm pretty sure she would have planned her own funeral to be the biggest, most spectacular. She'd probably be on some sort of Cleopatra deathbed, surrounded by sycophants. I can't imagine what her last words will be. Something like, "I was fabulous."
Yeah.
Something like that. She's a ludicrous woman. Really ludicrous.
Yeah, she's a joke individual, isn't she? You paint an entertaining picture of her there. Do you think Harry has a guilty pleasure that this one's wife doesn't know about? And if he does, what might it be? Bearing in mind, you've also alluded to the fact they don't live together, so he could be getting up to all sorts, the dirty little rascal. What do you think that might be?
Oh, loads of girlfriends. Some people think he's gay. I'm not so sure about that. But yeah, probably loads of girlfriends.
Yeah, horny little ginger, putting it around, like a dog with 6 dicks.
I mean, I actually think he chose Meghan. So if you look at his type, is a blonde. He goes on about his mother a lot. His mother was a blonde. I think he loved Catherine so much that, being the moron he is, he thought, Meghan's got long dark hair, Catherine's got long dark hair, they're bound to be the same. That's how I think he formed the conclusion.
You know, there could be force in that suggestion. It's quite a good impression of him as well, if I may say so. That would probably be the level of his thoughts. He's very sort of, by all accounts, he is driven by little Harry, isn't he? From what they called him Blowjob Harry, and he would be motivated, and as we know, that was part of her manipulation over him to give him plenty of spicy poontang. That's what he fought with. Now then, what do you think is the first thing that this one's wife washes when she's in the shower?
I have no idea. No idea.
She's picked up the bar of soap. Perhaps it's been developed for American Riviera Orchard, but isn't yet for sale. Or maybe she's got the loofah stick and she's
soap on a rope.
Yeah, got the old soap on a rope. Yeah, she's there. The old imperial leather or something like that. Where's that poor soap bar going first?
I would imagine that firstly she'd have a big shower cap. She wouldn't want to get her hair wet.
Right. Why do you think that is?
Oh, it'd be ruined. I bet
Yeah.
it takes hours and hours and hours and a whole team to get it like that. So I've no idea. I've no idea.
Okay. And when Harry's sat on the throne, i.e., he sat on the toilet, what's he thinking about?
Oh, cartoons, you know, stuff like that. Call of Duty.
He's probably still playing it, isn't he? Well,
probably looking at the cracked tile and thinking, "Oh, that looks like an elephant." You know, that banal.
Yeah, makes sense. Now, what do you think that this one's wife and Harry's overarching agenda is, if there is one at all?
Well, she wants to be rich and famous and be on red carpets and be adored in Hollywood. And I think he'd probably quite happily live in a mud hut in Africa or live in the middle of nowhere, somewhere rural.
Yeah.
So they've got conflicting ambitions and always have. It was never going to work.
No. I agree with you that he would be far more content rolling up his sleeves and being out there on the veldt, doing some works there. Although he has come from this life of privilege, I think where he finds himself in a meaningful application is doing something practical, because he's not particularly cerebral, and I don't think celebrity particularly appeals to him in the slightest.
No, well, the Windsors are very outdoorsy people. They go walking a lot. They're into sport. They've already arrived. They have nothing to prove, you know, which is why it's so bizarre that Meghan felt it wasn't kind of big enough for her. This stupid little queen, stupid little castle. What the hell?
Well, I think it was more about, given her arrogance, she didn't take the time to actually understand the institution and realize just how effective it could have been. I often talk about how her narcissism failed to harness it and instead fought against it, because there are plenty of individuals that are born into those institutions and who are narcissists, and who actually subconsciously recognize the value of remaining within that organization because it serves their narcissism damn well. Then there are instances of individuals who are narcissists who have married into royal families, and their narcissism is recognized. Jackpot, let's stay in this. I'm prominent, I'm wealthy, I've got people running around after me, I get seen, I'm in the magazines, this is great. And the narcissism subconsciously is sat there rubbing its hands saying, this is great that you've got yourself into this position. With her narcissism thought, great, you're in there, but then basically caused her to think, right, I'll call the shots now. I'm this supposedly empowered feminist, and I'm now going to tell you how to run this joint, and you will do what I say. And basically, this institution, through its various human representations, said, it doesn't work like that, dear. You do what the institution wants. And of course, her narcissism didn't like that. And rather than think to itself, well, we're onto a good thing here, so let's keep that in place and dial down some of the objections, she threw the rattle out of the pram and claimed, and then of course we have all the ridiculous racism claims, etc. So she ran away. Yes,
she's not very intelligent, is she?
No, she's not at all, Fiona. This whole thing, I don't even think she graduated. I know there's some doubt about it. I don't think that she did.
Yeah.
You only have to listen to the way that she speaks. And whilst one can make an allowance for a cultural difference between you and I are British, and so some people in the United States, they do have a different outlook. I'm not talking about narcissists. They do have a different outlook on life compared to us. We're generally more reserved. They're a little bit more upbeat about things. But with her, you just listen to the way that she speaks, and it's your gums are flapping. But what you're saying is meaningless. It doesn't provide anything of value, and it demonstrates she's not clever. She's cunning in the sense of her narcissism was cunning to ensnare ginger bollocks. But
well, it wouldn't have taken much with him.
No, exactly.
Mummy's perfume.
Mummy's put two things behind her ears: Mummy's perfume and her ankles, and then she's good to go.
And she looks a bit like Kate.
And she looks a bit like Kate. So you could imagine Harry was like, oh, he was onto those vinegar strokes before it was 8 o'clock in the evening. Well, Fiona, thank you very much for your company today. There's only one more thing that we have to do before we move on, and that's to have a quick game of this or that, where I give you a series of selections, and you have to imagine that there is a metaphorical weapon pointed at you, meaning you can't decline, you can't say neither of them, you have to make a choice. Okay? So here we go. Fruit or veg?
Fruit.
Summer or winter?
Summer.
Text message or telephone call?
Text message.
Laptop or tablet?
Laptop.
Driver or passenger?
Driver.
Sapphire or ruby?
Sapphire.
Soft or hard?
Soft.
Dusk or dawn?
Dusk.
Unicorn or dragon?
Dragon.
Fresh linen or fresh coffee?
Fresh linen.
James Bond or Jason Bourne?
Oh, James Bond.
Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings?
Oh. Lord of the Rings.
Said with pain. Jam or marmalade?
Marmalade.
Roses or lilies?
Lilies.
Christian Bale or Hugh Jackman?
Christian Bale.
Titanic or Ghost?
Titanic.
Yellow or orange?
Orange.
Spring or autumn?
Spring.
Wizard or warrior?
Wizard.
Mountain or beach?
Beach.
Wasps or bees?
Bees.
Sparkling or still?
Sparkling.
Frasier or Seinfeld?
Sorry, what?
Frasier or Seinfeld?
Fraser.
Homer or Bart?
Bart.
Dogs or cats?
Cats.
Spending the afternoon with Oprah or an evening with Ellen DeGeneres?
Ooh. Oprah.
Saturday or Sunday?
Saturday.
Reading the book or watching the film adaptation?
Watching the film.
Prince William or Loose Cannon Louis?
Prince William.
Sophie or Princess Anne?
Sophie.
Harry or This One's Wife?
Oh. Harry.
This One's Wife or Prince Andrew?
Prince Andrew.
Okay, you have to spend a day with This One's Wife doing precisely what she wants, or if you can't stomach that, you can't make another video about her ever again. Which is it?
I'd spend the day with her.
You spend the day with her. That concludes this or that. Thank you very much for giving me your time today, Fiona. Pleasure to speak to you. And I look forward to doing so at a future point.
Thank you very, very much for your time and inviting me on. I've really enjoyed it.
Jolly good.